So, sir, can I start? So, good evening, everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the animal kingdom chapter. You know that this chapter is very important for the NEET examination. In the last year, 2020 NEET examination also, we got around 4 questions from this chapter. So in the today's class, we will discuss the major concepts only will discuss, and that is very, very important for the NEET examination. I would like to tell one thing regarding this chapter. Compared to the other chapters in the 11th standard and the 12th standard, the animal kingdom chapter, you may have to focus only on the NCERT. The last 3 or 4 years question paper, while you see it, you will clearly understand the NTA has not asked anything outside the NCERT. So I'm requesting everyone, this chapter, you should only focus on to the NCERT level. So in this chapter, we are starting with the basis of classification. So before we start this, I would like to tell one thing. You can put your doubts in the chat box. After some topics, we will see the chat box and I will clear the doubts. So you have that options also. So please utilize that. So now we can start. You know very clearly, you might be already known about it. Basis of the classification, first thing we are discussing here, it is levels of organization. Everyone know very clearly, levels of organization are 4 types basically. First one, cellular level, tissue level, organ level, and the organ system level. So please understand, cellular level, what is the meaning of the cellular level of organization? In the cellular level organization, if you are taking, the body is made up of cells. The best example for this particular cellular level organization it is, you know, everybody know that the sponges, the phylum Porifera. Now, the tissue level organization means in this organisms, the cells club together and the tissue forms. This kind of organization you can see in the case of phylum Coelenterata, then the Pleurobrachia, that phylum you know very clearly. So they will show the bioluminescence. Coelentrates, you know that the jellyfish, hydra, that everything contained inside this coelenterate. So please understand, the tissue level organization also, we have the 2 examples here. One is phylum Coelenterata and the Pleurobrachia like organisms. Now the next one, it is organ level. Organ level, you know very clearly that example for this, it is very important. The main example for it is tapeworms. The tapeworm, everybody knows it. It is coming under phylum Platyhelminthes. The fasciola, liver fluke, all these coming under this Platyhelminthes only. Now coming into the organ system level, in that many organs will be present and they will be interacted in the systematic manner. That kind of organisms only we call it as organ system level organization. You know very clearly the phylums are arthropods, the annelids, mollusks, etc., etc., many chordates, hemichordates, all are coming under this organ system level organization only. I hope it's this many points are very clear to everyone. So first, levels of organization under the basis of classification we discussed. Cellular level, tissue level, organ level, and the organ system level. I hope it's clear to everyone. So now we can move to the next part. So the next one it is, if you are taking the digestive system, digestive system are two types. The incomplete digestive system and the complete digestive system. Please understand everyone. You know what is the first? The meaning of the digestive system. Digestive system means, in our body case means, it will start from the mouth and it will end in the anus. And you know very clearly, in the case of humans and the higher level organisms, to take the food, we have the mouth, and to excrete the waste products, we have the anus. We have a separate opening for swallowing the food and excreting the food. If the digestive system is such a way arranged, that system we call it as complete digestive system. There will be a mouth as well as anus. But in the organisms like Platyhelminthes, if you analyze them, you will realize that they have only one opening. So if you consider them, through this one opening only, they will swallow the food as well as they will excrete the food out. That kind of digestive system, we call it as incomplete digestive system. I think that point is also clear to everyone. So complete and the incomplete digestive system. Now, the next one we can discuss, it's about the circulatory system. Circulatory system are two types: open circulatory system and the closed circulatory system. circulatory system, please understand, they will be have the proper developed blood vessels. You know one thing very clearly. In our body, if you are checking, we have the arteries, we have the veins, arterioles, venules, aorta, etc. And you know very clearly, this arteries, veins, they will distribute the blood to the different part of the body. And they also will take the blood, the veins case, they will take the blood from the different part of the body and will bring into the heart. This kind of circulatory system, we call it as closed circulatory system. In the case of humans and other mammals. In the lower vertebrates also, lower invertebrates, you can see that annelids also having this kind of closed circulatory system. So remember, in the closed circulatory system, they will be have the well-developed blood vessels, the arteries, veins, arterioles, and the venules. But while we're looking into the open circulatory system, this is present in the case of arthropods, the mollusk, etc., many other animals. You can see that in those organisms, if you are checking, they will not be have the well-developed the blood vessels. They will not be have the separate blood vessels to take the blood into the different organs. So that what will happen in those organisms if you are taking, from their heart, the blood will be pumped out and all the vital organs will be present in this region only. So as they have no proper developed circulatory system or the not proper developed blood vessels, from the heart of these animals, the blood will be oozed out into the cavities. And in those cavities only, the vital organs will be present. So they will be directly bathed by this blood. But if you take in our body, you just imagine, I will make you understand the difference. For example, you want to supply the blood to the liver. It will be carried by proper blood vessels. If you want to supply into the brain, that will be also carried through the proper blood vessels. But in the case of this particular organ system, if it is a liver or a brain, it will be present in this region only, and they will be bottled. That's the major difference of open circulatory system and the closed circulatory system. I hope that is also clear. Now, if you're clear that, we can move to the next. The next thing we are going to discuss, please understand the symmetry. You just take some organisms like this is a sponge. The sponges, if you are taking, you just try to cut them from any plane. You will never get the symmetrical left and the right half. This kind of symmetry, we call it as asymmetry. So any organism, while you try to cut through any plane, but if you are not getting the symmetrical right and the left half, we will say that that kind of organisms having the asymmetry. The best example for that, it is sponges. I hope it's clear. Now look on to the next. You take a cockroach, or you take a earthworm, if you cut them from one plane, you will get exactly the right and the left half. So what is this kind of symmetry called? This kind of symmetry, we call it as bilateral symmetry. So in the bilateral symmetry, please understand very clearly, understand the definition for that. From one plane, while we cutting, at least from one plane, while you cutting, if you are getting the identical right and the left half, then you can call it as bilateral symmetry. Remember, in only one plane. Now, coming into the next, that's really important. You take the organisms like the starfish. This kind of organism, if you are cutting from any plane, whether you are cutting from this way or this way or this way or this way, please understand, from any plane if you are cutting, you will get the identical left and the right half. That kind of symmetry, we call it as radial symmetry. Clear to everyone? Understood? So please understand this one also. The radial symmetry means from any plane if you're cutting, you will get identical right and the left half. But in the case of bilateral symmetry, only one plane. Clear? And in the case of asymmetry, from any plane if you're cutting, never you will get the identical right and the left half. I hope that is also clear to everyone. Right. So I'm going to drop it. Now the next one is germ layers. So please understand what is a germ layer. Everybody please understand the concept behind it first. You know that the sperm, they will fuse with ovum and will get zygote. The sperm fuse with ovum and will get zygote through the fertilization. Nobody is having the doubt. This everybody knows that. Now, after that, what will happen? the zygote will keep on divide and that become a human body. Yes, everybody understood? So sperm, ovum, they will fuse each other and zygote will form. Zygote will keep on divide and we will get a human body. And this human body, if you are checking, it will be have the brain, it will be have the eyes, it will be have the mouth, it will be have the heart, it will be have the lung, every organ. So please understand, in the embryonic period, while we are fetus, actually this organ structures will not be developed. Very slowly only they will start to develop. Actually, all body organs in our body is developed from three main layers. They are ectoderm, endoderm, and the mesoderm. So when the zygote starts to divide and form the human body, in this process, the zygote will keep on divide and they will form the germ layers. From those germ layers only, different organs will be formed out. If you take the humans and other mammals, our body organs will be developed from all these three layers: the ectoderm, endoderm, and the mesoderm. So the humans and the higher animals, we call them as the triploblastic, because we have the ectoderm, we have endoderm, and the mesoderm. I think that's clear. But some lower level organisms, if you are checking, there all the organs will be developed from ectoderm and the endoderm. That kind of organisms or that kind of system, we call it as diploblastic. So please understand, in the diploblastic organisms, generally speaking, the mesoderm layer will be absent. Instead of the mesoderm, they will be have the mesoglia layer. What is the difference of mesoderm and the mesoglia? Mesoderm is a differentiated layer. What is the meaning of differentiation? That layer can differentiate and form the organs. But in this case, mesoglia, you check it, they are undifferentiated. They cannot divide further. Point is clear to everyone? So please understand, the lower level organisms like the sponges, jellyfish, pleurobrachia, this kind of organisms is coming under as diploblastic only. So the diploblastic examples are jellyfish, pleurobrachia, then sponges. And rest of all animals will be come under triploblastic. They have all the three germ layers: ectoderm, endoderm, and the mesoderm. I hope that is also clear to everyone. Right. Now we can move to the next. Now listen to the next point. That's a really important. We call it as phylum. What is a phylum? We have to understand. I will make you understand this. Just imagine this is the body wall, and there is a gut wall. Gut means the abdominal wall. Right. Now, if you're checking in the, please listen, this point is really important. If you're checking in the some animals, in between the body wall and the gut wall, you can see a cavity. This cavity, we call it as phylum. See, listen everyone. In some organisms, embryological period, if you are taking, during the embryological period, when onwards the embryological period will start, from the 12th day onwards, it will start after the fertilization. So please understand that day onwards. So that day onwards, please understand there will be a cavity in some organisms. There will be a cavity between the body wall and the gut wall. This cavity we call it as phylum. So those organisms having this cavity, and it is lined by mesoderm, then that kind of organisms we call it as phylum. The examples are mammals, the arthropods, annelids, all these organisms coming under this phylum soul. But if you take some other organisms, this phylum will be completely absent. They will not be have a phylum. That kind of organisms we call it as aphylum. But in some organisms, you can see that they will be have the phylum, and mesoderm will not be fully lined. Instead of that, it will be scattered and will be present like this. This kind of organisms we call it as pseudophylum. What do you mean by pseudo? Pseudo means false. Why we call it as false phylum? Because this phylum cavity is not fully lined by mesoderm. Instead of that, the mesoderm is scattered. That kind of scattering only we can observe in the case of pseudophylum. Pseudophylum example all the time you should remember. The example is nothing but Ascalmindus. And the examples for the phylum that is also very famous. It is nothing but the Platyhelminthes. Clear everyone? That point is also clear. So phylum, aphylum, pseudophylum. Phylum examples are all the higher level organisms. From this particular arthropods, annelids, chordates, mammals, humans, everywhere you check it, they are phylum. Aphylum, it is Platyhelminthes. Pseudophylum, it's very important, is Ascalmindus. So these two are very important. I hope that is also clear. All right. Now we can move to the next. The next thing we are going to discuss, it is about the notochord. please understand very clearly, notochord will not be present in all the animals. So those organisms having this notochord, we call them as chordates. So those organisms having this notochord, that organisms what we call chordates. So those organisms does not have this notochord, we call them as non-chordates. Point, is it clear? So those organisms having the notochord, we call it as chordates. Those organisms does not have the notochord, we call it as non-chordates. Now listen to the next point. So from where this notochord is arising? Notochord actually arising from the mesoderm germ layer. So where exactly present it is? In the chordates. Most of the organism, it is dorsally present. And also remember one thing, I would like to bring your attention into one more point. In the case of vertebrates, please remember, in the case of vertebrates, this notochord will be replaced by vertebral column. This vertebral column may be made up of cartilage or by bone. So those vertebrates, it is made up, those vertebrates, vertebral column is made up of cartilage. We call it as cartilage vertebrates. And those vertebrates, its vertebral column is made up of bone. We call it as bony vertebrates. So during this time, I would like to bring your attention into two more examples. If you take the fish category or the fish class, Chondrichthyus, they are coming under this cartilaginous vertebrates. And the Osteichthyus, they are coming under this particular bony vertebrates. So we call them as bony fishes. Okay, I think all of you are remembering that point also. Please connect these 2 points because sometimes they will connect and ask it. I hope this notochord also is clear. All right. Now we can discuss the next one. Listen, everyone, the last one in the basis of classification, it is segmentation. You just take the example of the earthworm. Earthworm's body, you know that it is right. So if you're taking the earthworm's body, their body is externally and internally divided into different segments. See, you just look onto here. If you take the case of earthworm, their body is externally and internally divided into different segments. This we call it as segmentation. But apart from this, in the case of earthworm, if you are checking, some of their organs that will be seen, for example, the first segment what you are seeing or the second segment what you are seeing, that might be seen in the sixth segment or in the 8th segment, sometimes in the 10th segment also. So that means apart from this external and the internal division into different segments, please remember the one more very important characteristic, their organs, the same organs will be repeated in the different segments. Same organs will be repeated in different segments. And this process, or this, we call it as metamerism. So what is metamerism? Externally and the internally body divided into different segments, plus there is a serial repetition of the organs in the different segments. That is what we call it as metamerism. Metamerism, example only this earthworm. Right, everyone? Understood? That point also clear? Right. I hope this many points are very clear. The basis of classification is over. So if you have any doubts, you can just keep it in the chat box, because one section of the lecture is over. So any points, if you have the doubt, you can keep it in the chat box. Anyone? Okay. So anyone, any questions, any doubts? Right. So we can start the next one. The first one we are starting here, it is phylum Porifera. So listen, everyone, the important concepts only we will discuss here. These organisms we already discussed. They are example for the cellular level organization. These organisms are most primitive multicellular organism. Most primitive multicellular. The most primitive multicellular organism. Please understand, if you check the body, please listen. You can see that it is full of pores. So that's the reason we call them as porifera. If you're taking their body, we can see a specialized water transportation system. We call it as water canal system. How this water canal system is made, we can see that. So this is the organism's body, right? So this organism is marine. So surrounding to that, it is water. Okay. So listen everyone. Through this opening, the water and other food products will enter into the body. Okay. This opening, we call it as ostia. And all this water, everything will be moved out of the body through another opening, and that is called osculum. So the water and other food products, they will enter into the body through this ostia, then it will pass out of the body through the osculum. Now remember one thing also, from the ostia, this fluids and other things, they will come into a region or a central cavity region, and that we call it as spongiocele. The spongioceles, if you are taking, this spongiocele region and this region, it will be lined by a very important cells, and this cells we call it as collar cells, or we call it as conocytes. So why we call them as collar cells? Because of that shape, the collar shape. They are flagellated. Please remember that point. They are flagellated. So remember the water canal system of this sponges. The water enters into the sponge's body through the opening called ostia. Then it will reaches to the cavity called spongiocele. Then the water will be moved out of the body, or the waste products will be moved out of the body. That is through the osculum. So I would like to write here again that because it's important. Ostia, spongiocele, and the osculum. This will be the pattern of the water movement. And this spongiocele regions, if you are checking, they will be lined by a particular cells. It's called as collar cells because of its shape. We call them as collar cells. Otherwise, it is known as the conocytes. And you please remember the whole body of this sponges, if you are taking, it is made up of a skeleton. That skeleton we call it as spicules. The whole body of the sponges is made up of a skeleton framework, and that is we call it as spicules. I think that point is also clear. Now listen, the very important 2-3 points also you should remember here regarding this phylum Porifera. Phylum Porifera, if you are taking, they have the indirect development. So what is the concept of indirect development? Indirect development means First of all, please understand that kind of organisms will be have the larva stage. Indirect development organisms, first of all, please understand, they will be have a larva stage. That larva, if you are taking, they will be completely different from the adult. You just take the example we have discussed before. Maybe we might be seeing before the very common example. The frog, you know that. What is the larval form of the frog? Tadpoles. Tadpoles and the frog is very similar? No. You take the mosquito. Mosquitoes, you might be seeing the small larva of the mosquito. Is this very, very similar to the mosquito? No. So that kind of larvas, and they are not at all similar to the adult. And that we call it as, or that kind of development we call it as indirect development. Point, is it clear? But while we're looking on to us, the baby humans or the baby of the humans, if you are checked whether it is a male or female, they will be almost like the adults, even though they have the size difference. So then we call it as, it's a direct development. So the humans and most of the mammals, they have the direct development only, no doubt in that. I hope it's very clear what is the meaning of direct and the indirect development. Right. So phylum Porifera is having the indirect development. Now, one more thing, please understand. That's the last point regarding this phylum Porifera. Phylum Porifera, if you're checking, please understand, their sexes are not separate. What is the meaning of that? If you take the humans, you know that there is a male and the female. Then we can say that the sexes are separate. But in the case of lower level organisms like this Porifera, their sexes are not separate. So that means in the one organism itself, you will see the both male and the female structures. So that's the reason. Please understand, in the one organism itself, you will see the both males and female organ or the sex organs. That kind of organisms, we call them as hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite. So please understand, phylum Porifera is the example for hermaphrodite. Their sexes are not separate. I hope that point is also clear. No doubt. All right. Now, almost everything we have discussed under this Porifera. Now we can move to the next. So listen everyone, the next one. The next one is, we have to discuss about the phylum Coelenterata. Phylum Coelenterata, important points we have to discuss here. The main important point it is, Phylum Coelenterata, the body, if you are checking, please understand their body contains a very particular organ structure or the one structure that will help for many functions. That structure we call it as nidoblast. Please understand what is the use of this nidoblast if you are asking. This nidoblast contains very toxic poisonous substances. Generally, this nidoblast contains neurotoxins. Because of this neurotoxins, the organisms, the attackers or the prey, they will get paralyzed and the coelentrates can easily eat them. This nidoblast present in the coelenterata will help for the defense, capturing the prey, and the anchoring also because of their tail-like structure. Please understand this nidoblast, it will be generally seen in the tentacle region of the coelenterate. Please understand what is a tentacle. It is a muscular structure. Now, the next important thing you have to learn about the coelentrates are coelentrates generally having two kinds of forms, the polyp and the medusa. Now, we can see the difference between the polyp and the medusa. Listen. This is the polyp and this is the medusa. So please understand, polyp is generally sessile. What's the meaning of sessile? They are immovable, non-movable. What is a medusa? They are free swimming. Right? So some of the examples, please understand some of the examples if you are taking. The polyp, the good example for it is hydra, sea anemone, etc. Here we have the jellyfish, otherwise known as Aurelia. I think point is it clear? But some organisms coming under this phylum Coelenterata, they will be in their life cycle, they will be have the both polyp and the medusa form. That means they can change from polyp to medusa and Medusa to polyp. Just as a memory technique, polyp to Medusa, Prime Minister. Prime Minister will reproduce asexually. M. Medusa to polyp. Member of Parliament will reproduce sexually. Just for a memory technique. So polyp to Medusa asexually, Medusa to polyp sexually. Prime Minister will reproduce asexually. Member of Parliament, MPs will reproduce sexually. So that's a simple technique. You can remember that. So this kind of, in the life cycle, two forms you can observe in some kind of cylindrate. One example for that, it is Obelia. This is a common question. This kind of alternation in generation, that means they can show the two kinds of forms. That kind of ability, we call it as please understand that power will not be there for all the organisms. Only few organisms will have the power for that. Don't think that all these cylindrates will have that ability. Only few organisms will have that ability to change the polyp to Medusa and the Medusa to polyp. So please understand that one example only for that, it is Obelia. So I think that point is also clear to everybody. Now listen to the next point. If you look on to this particular cylindry, the opening region into the digestive system, that opening we call it as hypostom. Right. So please understand that point is also very, very important. So don't forget that. So I think that point is also clear, no doubt. Right. So now we can move to the next part. So remember, this alternation in generation, that means they can, in the life cycle, they will have both the polyp and the Medusa, and that kind of process we call it as, or that ability we call it as metagenesis. So please do not be confused with the metagenesis and the metamerism. Both are different. Metamerism is seen in the case of annelids. There will be segmentation plus serial repetition of the organs. Here it is metagenesis. It is very unique ability of the cylindry. The polyp and the Medusa form in one cycle, in the one organism itself. The example we said, Obelia, and that process only we call it as metagenesis. I hope that is also clear. Now, the next important thing we can discuss. So, the next, while we're discussing about the Pleurobrachia, what is the important things you may have to remember about this? They have the property of bioluminescence. So Pleurobrachia-like organisms, they have the bioluminescence. These organisms also known as sea walnuts because of their characteristics shape. And they also known as comb jellies. They also have the comb jellies. So you can see that. So they will be have the this comb jellies. Right. So I hope that's the only important point in that. Now we can move to the next one, that is platyhelminthes. So platyhelminthes, important point, always remember. One thing I always remember, you have to remember inside your mind and body, that one is nothing but they are example for organ level organization, and also remember they are acoelomate. Please understand, they will act as endoparasites. Endoparasites. And the most important thing from this part, the question will come. What is their excretory structure called? It's called flame cells. What is the function of this flame cells? Flame cells will help for osmoregulation and excretion. But while we're discussing, please understand this point you may have to connect with the human excretory chapter. It is coming in the human physiology part in the 11th standard. That chapter also you should connect. Why? Because in that chapter, they have clearly mentioned flame cells, otherwise known as protonephridia. This protonephridia is not only the excretory structure of the platyhelminthes, it is the excretory structure of some annelids, cephalochordata, then some kind of rotifers. Rotifers means they are like rodents, right? So this flame cells, otherwise known as protonephridia, that will be seen other than this platyhelminthes. It also will be seen in some annelids. Cephalochordates is coming under the subclass of chordates, and also in the case of rotifers. Rotifers are like rodents. I hope that point is also clear. Now, what is the meaning of endoparasites? So you know the meaning of the parasite or the parasitism. In the parasitism, the one organism will get the benefit, other organism will get the harm. So, and if they are inside the body, this parasites acting like the parasites are act inside the body, then we call it as endoparasites. Please understand, platyhelminthes will act as endoparasites. They will be inside our body. The platyhelminthes will act as endoparasites in our body, many other animals' body. And also please remember this. Platyhelminthes, if you are taking the two examples, the tapeworm and the liver fluke. In the tapeworm, if you are taking, please listen. Generally speaking, platyhelminthes is having indirect development. So that means they have the larval stage. So if you take the tapeworm or the Taenia solium, this Taenia solium's larval stage development mainly will happen in the fork, the peak. So that what is the problem? If someone is not boiling the pork meat properly and eating, they will get this tapeworm infection very, very easily. Because without the proper boiling, we cannot kill the tapeworm larvae. So while we eating this pork meat, if they are not dying, they will be coming to our intestinal system, and it can cause a serious damage to our body itself. So those people are eating the pork meat or the pig meat. They are very vulnerable for this tapeworm infection or the tinea folium infection. I hope it's clear that point also. Now, the one last point regarding the platyhelminthes. Platyhelminthes, one example is planaria. This should be specially mentioned because planaria is free living. That means they are not parasitic. And also remember, they have the regeneration capacity. Clear? That point is also clear, no doubt. Right. So platyhelminthes is finished. Now listen to the next point. The next one is phylum Aschelminthes. Please understand, the main example in this it is the roundworms only, or we call them as Ascaris. The important point or the Ascaris lumbricoides, that's a full name of that. So please remember, the main points are this phylum Aschelminthes, if you are taking, they are also parasitic, almost like the platyhelminthes. In the case of this Aschelminthes, they have the very powerful, so listen, they have the very powerful muscular pharynx. If you take the case of platyhelminthes, they have the very powerful hooks and suckers for their parasitic characters. But in the case of phylum Aschelminthes, they have the powerful muscular pharynx for their parasitic ability. And also remember the one point we already discussed. These Aschelminthes are pseudocoelomics. No doubt. Now listen, very important three things. The examples. The three examples. The first one already I written, that is roundworm, that is Ascaris, and they will cause the disease called Ascariasis. So while we are learning the 12th standard human health and disease, we are discussing about this Ascariasis. It will affect our gastrointestinal system. Now the next organism coming under this, it's called Wuchereria bancrofti. It's otherwise known as filarial worm, because this organism only will cause the filariasis. This phylariasis, otherwise known as elephantiasis, because the leg of this people you are taking, because of this infection, the skin become very dry, and because after infecting the lymphatic vessels, the lymphatic vessel will be blocked with this filarial worm, so that the skin of the leg will be very dry and it will be enlarged. The leg will be enlarged. At the same time, the skin will be very dry, like an elephant. Elephant, if you are taking, their skin will be very dry if you touch, if you have the experience. So that's why we also calling them as elephantiasis. Please understand the question asked many times. In the filariasis, which system will be affected in our body? It's nothing but lymphatic system. Don't forget that. Wherever the lymphatic system is present, that all areas will be affected by this filariasis. Why the filariasis is so much affectionate with this lymphatic system? Because the larval stage of the Wuchereria bankrupti, L1, L2, and the L3. Among this L1, L2, and the L3, without lymphatic system, they cannot survive. So that's the reason they are affecting or they are infecting our lymphatic circulation or the lymphatic vessel. Point, is it clear to everyone? Understood? No doubt? Right. So that is also clear to everyone. Now, in this, one more example is there. That is not very important. The ancylostoma, the hookworm, and that is not very important. The hookworm infestation. Okay. So now we can endorse into the next phylum, that is phylum Annelids. So in the phylum Annelids, the most important thing you may have to remember here it is their excretory structures. Their excretory structure is called nephridia. And if you take some annelids like the aquatic annelids, the aquatic annelids like the aquatic annelids like Nereis, you can see that they have a specialized structure, and that is called parapodia. This parapodia will help for the swimming as well as for respiration. And also please understand, in this phylum Annelids, if you are taking the earthworm, and the leech, they are monoecious. And if you are taking this Nereis, they are dioecious. So what is the meaning of monoecious and dioecious? Monoecious means in one organism itself, the male and the female structures, the sex organs will be present. The other one, it will be different in both. In the sense, they will have the separate sexes. So Nereis is dioecious, and the earthworm and the leech is monoecious. I hope that is also clear to everyone. So these are the major points you may have to remember. Now we can move to the next phylum, that is phylum Arthropods. So listen, phylum arthropods, important points you have to remember here. It is the excretory structure again. It is known as Malpighian tubules. And also remember, their body is divided into, listen everyone, their body is divided into head, thorax, and the abdomen. Head, thorax, and the abdomen. Clear? That point is also clear, no doubt. So their body is divided into head, thorax, and the abdomen. Right, now coming into its examples, one of the very good examples we may have to discuss here, it is about the mosquitoes. There are many other examples for that we are not detailedly discussed here, but other ones should be discussed. The mosquito. So why I'm telling mosquito should be discussed? Because some points we have to be told. You know that the major three mosquitoes are, mosquitoes generally they will cause the diseases. They will act as vectors. You know that if you take the female Anopheles, they will cause the malaria. The female Culex, that will cause filariasis. Female Aedes aegypti, they will cause many diseases like dengue fever, chikungunya, etc., many other diseases. Now, in this example, one more thing is very important. You might be heard about them. In the last year, we have an attack of them, and that is nothing but Locusta, the gregarious pest. Why the term gregarious pest? Because they will go as group or attack as group. That's the reason the locustal attack. Okay. And also please understand the living fossil, that is king crab or the limulus. That is also please remember. And I would like to add one more point here. In those arthropods only, we are categorized the crustaceans also, like prawns and crabs. Why I pointed out here? Because if you take the crustaceans like organism, their excretory structure is not Malpighian tubules. Their excretory structures, we call it as antennal glands. Antennal glands. This antennal glands, otherwise known as green glands. Is it clear to everyone? So that's the important point you may have to remember about the phylum Arthropoda. Now we can go to the next one. So listen. The next point we can discuss, that is about the mollusk, phylum mollusk. So the main thing you may have to remember here is their body divided into the head, visceral hump, and the muscular foot. Please understand, you might be knowing that this organisms only will give the pearl to us. So to synthesize this pearl, they have a special cavity called it as mantle cavity. And to wrapping the food, they have a specialized structure, and that is called as radula. So these are the major points you may have to remember here. And also remember one thing, they are the second largest phylum. The first or the largest phylum is arthropods only. Second largest phylum is mollusk only. That's an important point you may have to remember about the mollusk. Now the next one it is phylum Echinodermata. Phylum Echinodermata, please understand, they have a specialized structure and it is known as water vascular system. This water vascular system only will help for its transportation, nutrition, excretion, and many other things. And also remember one thing, this water vascular system, they will help for nutrition, the excretion, and the transportation, etc. And here one thing you should be very careful. Regarding the symmetry, I would like to add one point here. If you're taking the adult Echinodermata, like starfish, adult starfish if you're taking, they have the radial symmetry. But their larval form, always remember, their larval form, they will be have the bilateral symmetry. This part should be very carefully understand because sometimes the question can be asked. So starfish case, if you are taking, the adult one will be having the radial symmetry and the larval one is having bilateral symmetry. I hope that point is also clear. Right. So that's all the important points regarding the Echinodermata. Now the next one, listen to the next point. So the next one is about the hemichordata. Right. So this hemichordata, if you're taking, they have a very particular one excretory structure and that is called proboscis. Please understand, initially we had classified the hemichordates as chordates only. We call them as chordates, but after that we reclassified them because they have some characters of chordates as well as the non-chordates. So now it's a separate class, the hemichordates. The proboscis gland is the excretory structure of this hemichordates. So this organism, it is, as it is there in the NCRT, this organism is Balanoglossus. The one more example, it is Saccoglossus. Remember, this organism excretory structure, you should remember it is proboscis. After that, they have a collar cell. So please remember these 2 points at least. Right. After that, if you are considering, the next one is chordates. So chordates, while we considering, please understand. Chordates will be having the two subclasses or three. The urochordates, cephalochordates, and the vertebrates. Please understand, if you take a chordate, chordates will be have the very characteristic features. They will be have the nerve cord. Okay. They will be hollow and single structure. And they will be have the notochord. They will be have the pharyngeal gill slits. Okay. And also remember, they will be have the post-anal tail. If you're taking the non-chordates, they will be have the nerve cord, but they will not be have the. Please remember, they will be have this, but it will be hollow, not single structure. It is double structure, and it is not hollow. Notochord, it will be absent. Pharyngeal gill slits absent. The post-anal tail also will be absent. So please understand that is a major difference of this particular chordates and the non-chordates. Now coming into the urochordates and the cephalochordates, I would like to add very important. Last NEET they asked about it. So if you consider the urochordates and if you consider the cephalochordates, in the urochordates, only the larval tail, they will be have this notochord. But in the cephalochordates, it will be throughout the body and throughout the life, it will be present. Throughout the life, it will be present in the cephalochordates body. But in the case of urochordates, it will be only present in the larval tail. Urochordates examples are Aphidia spelpa, cephalochordates amphioxus. That kind of examples you might be learned it. Now coming into the vertebrates, please understand vertebrates. The first classification it is Achnata. The other one is Ganathostomata. Ganathostomata we can divide into two. One is Pisces, other one is tetrapods. Under the Pisces only we are learned Chondrichthyes and the Ostichthys. And under the tetrapods only we have learned the amphibians, the reptiles, then apes and the mammals. And under the Achnata only, the cyclostomata will come. Clear? That point is also clear? No doubt, no? So please understand, vertebrates we can divide into Achnata and the Ganathostomata. Achnata we can further divide it into cyclostomata, and Ganathostomata we can further divide it into pieces, that is Chondrichthyes and Ostichthys. Tetrapods are amphibians, reptiles, apes, and the mammals. I think these points are also clear. Now, listen everyone, now we can discuss about the vertebrates. Vertebrates, while we're discussing, please understand one point very clearly. All vertebrates are chordates only, but all chordates are not vertebrates. All vertebrates are chordates, but all chordates are not vertebrates. Please remember that statement also. That's very important. Now we can discuss some points about cyclostomata. So cyclostomata, important example it is lamprey and mixing. Please remember one thing here. Generally, these organisms are marine, but for their reproduction, they will come into the fresh water. After that, what they will do, The larva will come. Larva will spend some time in the river or the fresh water. After that, they will go back into this sea or the marine system. So this part is really important. For the reproduction purpose, they will come into the fresh water. The larva will come. Larva will spend some time in the fresh water. After that, will go back into the sea. That's really important. And also remember, they will act as ectoparasite. Ectoparasite. They are not endoparasite. They are ectoparasite. This is also very important. I hope that is also clear. Now we can discuss about the chondrichthyes and the osteichthyes. So listen, everyone. Chondrichthyes, if you are taking the shark-like organisms coming under this, in here, rohu, katla, that kind of organisms coming under here. So remember, if you are taking the chondrichthyes, they have no operculum. That is the gills coverage. Their mouth, if you are taking, that is ventral mouth. And very important, they have the placard scales. Placard scales. But here, if you are taking the osteichthyes, they have the operculum. They have the terminal mouth. And you can also see that they have the stenoid scales. Please understand one thing very clearly. The one more point also should remember here. They have no air bladder. Air bladder absent. Here, air bladder present. So what is the advantage of this air bladder present? Because of the air bladder present, they don't have to come or they don't have to swim all the time. So they can easily float. But in the absence of the air bladder, they have to keep on swim, otherwise they will sink. So this point is really, really important. Please note it down. Very important point. So these are the major differences of the chondrichthyes and the osteichthyes. Now, after this, we can endorse into the next one, that is the class amphibians. Class amphibians, if you are taking, the very important thing you have to remember, they have no scales. Their ear will be represented by the tympanum. That's a very important structure. And remember, their urinary system, the gastrointestinal waste, and the sexual things, everything will be coming to the one opening, and that opening we call it as cloaca. That's also important. And also remember, their very important point, also remember, they have the 3 chambers of the heart. So they are cold-blooded. Cold-blooded means they cannot regulate their body temperature. So we call them as cold-blooded animals. Also, we call it as poikilothermic. That's a very important point you may have to remember. The toad, frog, the ichthyophysis, everything is coming under this particular amphibian. Right. So now moving into the next, that is the class reptiles. Class reptiles, you know very clearly, they have the cornified dry skin. The snake, the lizards, and all coming under this. Remember one point here, they also have the 3 chambers of the heart, with one exception. That exception is nothing but the crocodiles. Crocodile is having the 4-chamber heart. And also remember, as they have only the 3 chambers, they are also cold-blooded. Right? I think that point is also clear to everyone. So these are the important points in that. So the next thing we have to discuss about age. So age important points. This age is having 4-chamber heart. So they can regulate the body temperature. So we call them as homeothermic. And the age structure, if you are taking, please understand, they have no urinary bladder. Because of that reason, they can reduce their weight. And also remember, they have the lungs. Their lungs will be connected with many bony air sacs. These bony air sacs are connected with lungs. So this is also one important character. They will enable them to fly for long hours without any stop. Because the amount of oxygen they require will be stored here. So what will happen? Whenever it's required, it will become here, the lung. So they can utilize it. So this is also one very important point you may have to remember. And they have the lungs, they can regulate the body temperature, so we call them as homeothermic. And they have the feathers at every point you know very clearly. Now the final one, it's nothing but our mammals. You know very clearly the mammals is very unique. They have the mammary glands. But here I would like to add one and only one important point. While we're learning the examples, please remember, in that all other organisms are viviparous only. They will give birth to the baby, but only one oviparous in the mammalian section, it is platypus. So that point alone, please remember. It's really important. So this platypus, other than this platypus, there's important other points that they have the pinna externally here. They have the ventral heart. They have the kidney. And you can see the hair, the mammary gland. These all points also you can add along with it. So these are the major points we may have to discuss under this animal kingdom chapter. Thank you very much, everyone. If you have any kind of post, you can post it in the any kind of doubt, you can post it in the chat box. Right? Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.